Remember your first concert? Remember the excitement, the smells, the anticipation? Remember being wowed by the band? Remember standing up or maybe standing on your seat, ready to join in with the crowd as a familiar chord was struck on the guitar or keyboard and sang or screamed along, almost forgetting that you're an audience member? We get caught up in that glorious moment. But most of us don't often realize how much preparation goes into those events. And I'm not talking about the featured band or headliner, but those in the background that work tirelessly so we can be safe. Most of the time we are, and sadly, sometimes things don't work out as planned. Most of us assume that when we purchase tickets to a venue, that we are figuratively and literally purchasing the insurance that all the behind-scenes preparation has been carefully thought through and executed without a hitch, and that we will be safe. We've put our faith in the hands of experts. But who are these folks? Welcome to Small and Gutsy, our podcast featuring nonprofits and social impact organizations under $10 million. My name is Dr. Laura Witkoff, and I'm excited and proud to be your host. We hope you'll love the stories as much as we do, and perhaps you will find needed services, a job, volunteer, invest in, or donate. And for all of you followers, Small and Gutsy has just been granted nonprofit 501c3 status. We are thrilled to have moved in this direction, enabling us to continue to meet our vision of interviewing as many smaller nonprofits and social impact organizations as we can. So please pass along any valuable information you hear today to others and send me the name of any organization you'd like featured at lwitkoff@gmail.com. That's 2 T's and 2 F's. Safety at events became its own unfortunate headliner after the band Sugarland was about to perform at the Indiana State Fair on August 13th, 2011. A severe weather system with high winds moved through the Indianapolis area. A powerful gust of wind toppled the temporary outdoor roof that had been erected over the fair's permanent main stage. Large parts of the roof and supporting structure fell onto the folks gathered at the front of the stage. This tragedy left 7 dead and more than 40 others injured. Opinions ranged from an unforeseeable act of God to an avoidable consequence of human error. The finger pointing encompassed everyone from the event's organizers, crowd managers, roof technicians, to safety inspectors and weather forecasters. A group led by Jim Digby, tour manager for the band Lincoln Park, decided to take matters into his own hands and form the Event Safety Alliance, or ESA. This group is comprised of live event industry professionals and is a nonprofit membership-driven organization dedicated to life safety first. I just love that tagline, and promoting that throughout all phases of event production and execution. ESA's mission is to help event professionals and participants to be empowered, safe, and aware of the reasonably foreseeable risks around them, and they do this through education, skills training, and advocacy. Life safety is at their cultural heart and is built on 3 pillars: what is necessary to stay safe, how we can inspire others to be safe, and why everyone is responsible for life safety. They have put together an event safety guide, which anyone can download from their website, and I already have. They make it accessible and utilize best practices for all event professionals to use easily. They also have their own podcast, the Event Safety Podcast, with very useful information. I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Jim Digby, Chairman and President of this unique and necessary membership organization, and Donald Cooper, Executive Director of Event Safety Alliance. So welcome, Jim and Don. You really responded to a real need, and I imagine it took many, and still takes many, volunteer hours to put this alliance together. And to keep it going. So share your passion about Event Safety Alliance.
Thanks for talking to us about this. As you can imagine, this is outrageously important to us. Passion is a word that doesn't really completely describe how we feel about this important mission. Let's go back to about 2012. My background is in public safety, and so I was teaching search and rescue topics in the United Kingdom. And one of my friends and colleagues there said that I was approaching retirement. And he suggested that maybe I get a hold of some folks in the US that were pursuing an event safety alliance, a group that wanted to focus on safety. And he thought it would be a good fit. So he gave me some contact information that eventually led me to Jim Digby, who was starting up, kind of spinning up. They'd already met several times, and mostly a group of production professionals. Eventually, Jim said, "Why don't you get on this phone call we're going to have with this group of people?" They had all these people, idols really in the industry, some of the greatest production folks in the world, and me.
I want to highlight the fact that this was a large number of professionals who we all found ourselves on a conference call before Zoom. It was 1-800 conference call.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that group started as 2 people in a conversation, and then it was 4, and then it was 16. And before you knew it, there was more than 20 of us, all of whom were similarly affected by the results of what happened in Indiana, and all of whom had a desire to make a difference. And as time moved forward, this kind of ad hoc gathering of individuals, it felt like in order for us to really make change, we would need an organization. We would need to be something more than just a bunch of people with a good idea or the desire to make change.
So Jim basically put it to me toward the end of the conversation. You said you could help, so I expect you will, and here's what I'd like you to do. And part of that was put together the event safety guide. Was one of the short term. What we want to do is we want to write a book basically about these things. I do have a background in publishing, and so I was part owner of a publishing company in the realm of public safety. What I was able to do was kind of corral all these excellent people, and in doing so, I built relationships that are, more meaningful in my life than many could ever imagine. But what I started to realize was we were getting feedback, about, boy, this is really great information. I wish I would have known this, years ago. And I think you've helped. I think lives will be saved by this. And the first time I heard that, it struck me that, as a paramedic, I've heard that type of thing. Often I feel it's a bit over the top, but you mean this is kind of the same thing? We're really able to affect people's lives so directly and so significantly that maybe injuries will be reduced, that lives may last longer and may not be lost. It's hard not to be kind of pulled in. I can do certain things like accounting and bookkeeping and writing, and I do those things in the background for the Event Safety Alliance. But mostly when I go to an event or I watch Jim do what he's been doing for so long, I stand in awe of it's an emotional thing to be able to enjoy yourself and know that you're safe, that I want my kids to be able to go with me, and they have. One of the stories, Jim made me the best dad in the world at one time when he allowed my son, who was a big Linkin Park fan, actually go and meet the band. I don't think he probably knows, but most people maybe don't realize what a significant event that is for a father, being able to do that for a son, but also to be able to watch behind the scenes. And I know that my son, in that case, is safe, and he can have fun in a safe environment, but also not just the customers, if you will, the audience, but also the band members and the crew. There's a standard that exists, particularly at Jim's events, but certainly what he's doing is spreading the word that everybody can do a little bit better when it comes to safety.
Right. Don, I think it's a true marriage. I don't think you can entirely separate public safety, right, and events. I downloaded the manual, and I think it's absolutely terrific. And I'm not in your space at all. So I think that this was a great marriage, whether it was purposeful or by accident or however it sort of came to be. But it also sounds like you've built an incredible bond because it is about preventing things from happening. And so it really is the preservation of life, because people do go out and live in the world in lots of ways. And so to be able to go to an event or go to a rally or go to a place and feel that it's incredibly safe is a gift.
It's preventing injuries to your family is what it really is when we're talking about the crew and the audience, the people that literally pay for your lifestyle.
Right. So, Jim, so I use the word passion, but as Don said, it's more than passion. This is sort of a life calling in a way. I'm hearing it that way.
I'd be leaving a big chunk of the story out if I didn't connect the dots to the personal part of it for me as an individual, you know. And as a 19-year-old in 1983, I was a technician at a nightclub that was having its grand press opening. And at midnight, when the big reveal occurred, and you know, I can imagine what the circumstances were in '83, a lighting fixture, special effects lighting fixture, fell from the ceiling and killed a girl 8 feet from where I was standing.
Ugh,
And I was the technician operating that lighting fixture.
wow. So
Now
sorry.
subsequent deposition revealed that the contractors had not installed the safety mechanisms at the end of the track that this lighting fixture moved on. And, everybody was in a rush to get the club open. So when I operated it to the end of the track, rather than stop on its own like it was meant to do, it went off the end and went through the skull of Margaret Jones. Now, I was also a paramedic. I'm not a paramedic. I was in a volunteer rescue squad person at that time, and went to try to help. And, so got that vision emblazoned in my brain. So that was '83. And then, of course, we
And such
started.
a young age. I mean, and you were young.
Yeah, I was 19. And we started enacting safety protocols the day after we killed somebody, right? And so that theme of, safety preventatively began at that moment in time. And then I left that job, after some time and went to work at Disney, lasers and pyrotechnics and fireworks and things like that, highly safety exposed jobs, and was, given the Disney way when it comes to reckoning with safety and preparing for customer safety. And then through, just happenstance, I ended up on the stage in 1992 when Guns N' Roses and Metallica were doing a show together, and James Hetfield accidentally set himself on fire, and then 55,000 people rioted the stadium. And then I was one of 4 stage managers at Woodstock '99. So I had these
Boy,
really
have you
life-defining moments in my professional career that kept hammering and pulling at the scar tissue from 1983. So when Indiana occurred, this was also at a very vulnerable time in my life. Our son had just been born 2 years prior, and he came early, real early, with complications, and mortality was beginning to have a different definition for me. So when Indiana happened, I think one of my first, it was personal in the sense that it could have been me. It could have been any one of us in
right.
the industry at that time, because there was no written guidance, because there were no places to reference safety, because there was no education opportunities to learn how to be safe. It was all kind of word of mouth and on the job training in 2012, 2011. And so, but, in a self-preservation reaction to what happened in Indiana, I went to try to learn things and couldn't find any work. And at the same time, this kind of round robin phone call thing was happening where people were trying to affect change. And the pieces just added up for me to be around a driver's seat with respect to that operation. The universe kept dropping interesting people on us who could make a difference. Our vice president and attorney, Steve Edelman, we met at a conference for safety for venue people. And I thought, ooh, we need him. And then Don, I saw an email go by from Don, and he could write. And suddenly we had the task of having to do something now that we've said all these things. So it was time to pull Don in. And along the way, each person who's become part of the driving engine of the Event Safety Alliance arrived to the mission through happenstance, through luck, or perhaps through divine intervention. And we have an organization.
I believe in that actually. hmm You know what's so amazing, Jim, is that, and both Jim and Don, I think that so much of this, and this is true, I think, sometimes in public safety, is that everybody jumps to finger pointing. Who's responsible? We got to blame somebody. And there's so much effort and time spent on the blame side that you both had taken the opportunity. And Jim, you really spoke to that, sort of your career trajectory, what had happened since you were 19 all the way through, and that there were these constant doors or windows coming your way where you finally said, you know what, this is an opportunity to both learn and do something in a positive, forward thinking, where I feel most people just sort of want to blame and move on. And you all said, no, 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 there's much more to this. And you and other people, but you got this group together and kept saying, we need these folks to be able to really create something that did not previously exist.
There were two slightly related moments in time that I think made the difference for our ability to sustain as long as we have. One was the impetus for me personally, and that was a moment when I was in the house alone with my son, working in the office. He was 2 at the time, and I suddenly came to realize I couldn't hear him anymore in the background. I thought, oh, that's bad. I better go find him, and I couldn't find him anywhere. I couldn't. So finally, I did find him. He was in the pantry. He had climbed the shelves of the pantry, and I did what any good father would do. I went ahead and took a picture of him climbing the shelves of the pantry, right? And I said, "What are you doing, son?" And he said, "Nothing. I'm okay, Dad." Yeah, but what are you doing? I'm okay. And I waited, and he said, "Dad, can you get me down?" So it's a nothing moment. It's benign. I laid in bed that night, and I thought,
Right.
he didn't know he was in harm's
Uh-huh.
way, because
Uh-huh.
he knew I was there for him. He had an expectation of his
Right.
own safety, even at that young age. He couldn't process it, but
Right.
that's what was going on. But he was in harm's way and he didn't know it. And then it,
And he
woof,
was stuck. He needed help getting down. Yeah.
yeah. And then, like a hot flash, it connected to the 7 people who died in Indiana who had an expectation of safety, and we let them down as an
Yeah.
industry. And that was this
Right.
kind of coalescing moment.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I think is significant that got us to success, because in the early days, so many people were saying, oh, we've tried this before. It's never going to work. Nobody's going to listen. It's not going to go anywhere. We never spoke about the mission in a way that was finger pointing or accusatory. We said from the very beginning, this could have been any one of us. Let's learn together and let's lift the entire industry while we do
Bingo.
it.
Exactly right.
And I think that's the reason we still have a platform, albeit small. I think that's the reason we still have a platform.
Well, small and very gutsy. You're forward thinking. How can we build this, do it together, prevent things in the future as best as we can, given the information we have today? And you're all experts. And so what better community could you build for the rest of us who are the beneficiaries of what you have created, quite honestly?
I really enjoyed the how Jim described it as these people and things were just dropped on us. It struck me as I don't know if you call it luck or divine intervention, but
Serendipitous.
yeah, it certainly seemed to be guiding, at least in my case. The beginning of August 2011, I was tested. My brother had kidney disease and needed a kidney. And I was tested in early August and was not a good match for him. But on August 15th, he was made available a kidney that came from Indianapolis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so that's a couple days after the Indiana State Fair. And it wasn't until about a year later that I kind of thought of the potential for that. And so there are just small things like that caused me to think that we're going in the right direction. I hear this over and over again from Jim and his colleagues and all my friends at the ESA. They're looking for a way to continue to contribute. And that's the exact thought I had, getting toward my first retirement. How am I going to, after 30 years of doing something, stay not relevant per se, but contributing. I still have so much to offer. How can I possibly do this? And it seemed like within minutes, this opportunity came up where the it wasn't the principal elements of my expertise. It was kind of the secondary parts. Oh, so you can write a bit. Okay, could you help us with that? So you know how to put together a publication. Could you help us with that? These seemed like small, almost insignificant things, but over the years have apparently kind of been quite helpful in the industry.
You're a nonprofit and you're a membership organization, and anyone can download. In fact, I encourage every listener to download the manual. I think it's just a great thing to have. And if you do put on an event or are in the space, you can actually hire expertise. You've got a list of folks that are, it's a separate thing. And I love that because it keeps the integrity of what you've created intact, but allows people to get the expertise that they need if they can't do it themselves. Like I wouldn't want to do it myself, nor should I, but at least I can have some wherewithal and understanding of what's needed, and then hire that if I choose to put on an event. So I think it's brilliant, actually.
Well, there's a couple things also you should know, that since those early days in 2012 and 13, the event safety guide was definitely a big, huge first step for us. But there has been a number of other developments that we've made over the last decade or so. We have an online basic kind of safety training for industry professionals. We call it Event Safety Access Training, or ESAT. And that's in the process of actually being updated, actually. So we're trying to keep current with those. So it's a very basic understanding. We were rather hoping that at some point, maybe all managers and people that hire folks in the industry might require that at the very beginning of before they'll even allow them on site, for instance. That's a model that's been used in Europe, for instance, where we kind of are borrowing it from. There's a number of other projects that we've undertaken that we're working with, and all of them are done by far volunteers, people who are volunteering their time and energy to do this. Because, and I can say this with great assurance, that they care about each other. They don't want to see other members of their family hurt or injured, or worse, their livelihood threatened, because we don't have a safe place for people to come enjoy an entertainment offering.
For sure. And I did notice that you have a series of podcasts that are very informative that anyone can click on and listen to. So I think you have really, not only did you meet a need that was out there, but you've expanded on that as things have changed and progressed, which I really admire about your organization. It isn't a stagnant organization. It's really a wealth of information that continues to grow and flourish, which is wonderful.
When I'm out speaking about safety, one of the things I ask the audience is, what caused people to die in Indiana? And often I'll hear weather or I'll hear structural failure. And while those things are true, I argue that what caused people to die was the lack of an actionable plan, which is something we can do something about. One of the first things we approached as a solution for the industry was event weather planning, specifically to the events. Prior to 2012, everyone thought they were a meteorologist. Everyone could log into some weather site and look at the radar. And I myself was guilty of taking my pencil and estimating how long that was going to take for a storm to travel my way. And then we were lucky enough, again, serendipitously, to be on the campus of Oklahoma University with Dr. Kevin Claesel, the storm coordinating meteorologist, and the Severe Storm Prediction Center for NOAA. And we got exposed to real meteorologists, the kind that are really nerding out for this stuff, who were able to teach us that although we thought we were meteorologists and that the phone was a good tool, neither are true. And that led to another serendipitous meeting with a company that provides hyper accurate, hyper local weather forecasting for transcontinental shipping and other high risk, high stake industries. One of the things we learned was lightning can reach out 10 miles from a storm. So if that is fact, then we need to be putting the audience and everyone else in safe shelter, not when the black clouds are overhead, but from the time they're 10 miles out. So we started to connect all of these dots, and through a lot of great brains and some great thinkers, we managed to develop the first ever weather action plan, weather action trigger chart. And so that was circulated among the tribe within the ESA at first, and then I was on tour with Lincoln Park at the time, and would show up at a venue, and there would be our weather action matrix on the backstage. I'm like, wow, it's gone somewhere. It's doing something. For me, it was a proud moment to see our information out in the wild being used.
That begs another question for me is, so when someone purchases a ticket to an event, let's say, and I don't know whether you'll know this part or not, but do they have, like, if they have a plan in place, how do they then educate the folks who are attending, the general public, that in this event that this happens, or we're predicting X, we're going to delay 30 minutes and you get in your car and you wait there, and then how does that, because everyone has access to internet and phones, and so how does that, yeah.
And so how do we educate, or how do we make sure that the public knows about what safety is, or how to deal with issues that arise? There are standards now under development, and some have been achieved, that establish how to do that. How do you communicate with the audience? Do you use, everybody's got a phone in their pocket, everybody's got a camera in their pocket. Could we use that? Are there ways to put very well articulated emergency messages? We call them canned messages up on the screen, that don't induce panic, but communicate exactly what we'd like you to do. We also have a relationship with a global crowd management group that deals with the issues of crowd behavior. How do people react under stress when we put them in 10, 50,000 people groups? And so we are working with them to study and also then develop standards about how we should use that information to the benefit of all. So there's a whole bunch of fingers in different directions that we've evolved into that most people don't really realize, but are extraordinarily important for the safety of everyone involved.
To your point, there's some very specific communication needs when communicating to an audience that they need to take action to protect themselves, and it's wide ranging. And of course, no two events are alike, so you've got to plan for the audience that you have in there on that particular day. Is it senior citizens at a symphony? Is it country western? Who knows what it is? Is it a kid show? All of those have different communication requirements, and one of the things we're trying to do is bring science to our industry, something that's demonstrable, that we can hang our hat on, that we're confident is the right solution for those things.
You are not only giving the audience education, you also recognize that people's amygdala, their stress goes off immediately. And so if you're giving them an actionable item to do that they planned in advance or no, their likelihood is they're going to follow that, because you've thought it through. You've already done that pre-planning. And I think as audiences begin to practice that and recognize that their safety is at the forefront, if they read on the marquee or look at their phone, they'll know exactly what to do. And I think giving them that, because I think most people don't know what to do automatically. They just want to get out, or, and it could actually cause harm versus following a directive. So I love that you're doing that.
I would agree with all of that. And there are two parts in there to unpack. One is the Event Safety Alliance is raising the measure of reasonableness, right? Prior to our organization, reasonableness was defined by look left, look right. What those folks are doing, that's reasonable. Because all of those of us who lead live events, the dirty little secret is we don't have any certifications, any qualifications. There's no measure to our competencies that allows us to have these jobs. You joked about not wanting to produce an event, but based on what qualifications you'd be checked for, you could go out back and produce an event for 10,000 people if you wanted to. So we are in the work that we're doing, we're raising the measure by which you will be judged in the court of law in case in case, something goes bad. At the same time, we're providing, hopefully, um, benchmarks for how to get that education or where to learn those things, or here's what's been done in other places. One of the things both Don and I have neglected to mention so far is that we were accelerated on our path thanks in large part to an individual who came from England, who in England, they had their seminal moment, their Indiana, some decade before ours or more. And the same sort of thing happened. A group coalesced around the idea of doing better, and they created the HSE 195, the Purple Guide in the UK, by the Health and Safety Executive. So this was work that was already completed, and he came with a permission slip for us to plagiarize it, if you will, and turn it into a guidance that was of our mindset. We expanded on it. We filled in some gaps that it didn't have, and we did it with the mindset that this could apply globally as opposed to just in one place.
Now, toward the end of the podcast, I always have a round of quick and gutsy questions. So are you all ready for my quick and gutsies?
Sure.
What is at the top of your wish list for Event Safety Alliance, but it cannot be money or funding? What is at the top of your wish list?
I'll go first. Without question, the top of my wish list would be that people just as bright and smart as my current friends, more of them show up with some availability to help us the way that the current folks have been doing for more than 10 years now. So yes, cash would be the first to fund our great ideas, but second would be the people, the right people with the right hearts and the right capabilities and motivation to continue to help.
Yeah, so building it out and really the succession planning of keeping it going. It's great. And to adding more product areas, which is what you're talking about too, which is great. Jim, what about for you?
It's multifaceted. We spent the last decade attempting to drive this mission top down, meaning directing our work and trying to drag in influencers at the top of their game who are 20, 30, 40-year veterans who could then influence downstream of them. There is truth to the tale that you will hear, I've been doing it this way for 30 years now. Why do I need to change? And some folks just can't change. So we've recently embraced the idea of bottom up. And by that, I mean, we really need to see our material, our mission, the guide being taught in university. One of the things we've been exploring in the last few years is what are the universities teaching? And by and large, what you find is most of them, if not all, are teaching the above the line jobs, music producer, agent, manager, these kinds of, sound engineer, these kinds of really royalty jobs that are thin in the amount of people that actually get to do those things. No one's teaching the beauty of production and producing live shows, or very few, I shouldn't say no, very few are producing that element to a agreed standard. And there's a lot to gain from that. I've traveled the world for 30 years at somebody else's expense, right? I've seen quite a few places. And I would offer that, boy, there's a lot to gain for a university to embrace these programs and to make sure that no one leaves those programs with just the knowledge of how to produce the show, but how to do so safely.
I love that.
And that safety be as integral a point of the learning process as producing a successful show.
If you were to think of a song that describes Event Safety Alliance, ESA, you could also do it to describe life safety, because I love that as a tagline. What would it be? Don's laughing, so he's got one in mind.
Well, there's a band called Men Without Hats. It's an older band. They have the safety dance.
I know it.
Is a song they play. So that comes to mind for me. It also dates me a little bit.
I'll take the dating back even further. As an old softie, Jackson Browne, The Loadout, speaks to our tribe in such an elegant way. And, that song just always grabs at my heartstrings because it captures the joy of the stuff that's going on backstage without having to be the front person. And, I think it's such a great job, and there's such great diversity in it, and the people are just
I love
really
Jackson
driven
Brown.
passionately. Jackson Brown, the Lowdown.
Yeah, I love Jackson Brown too. It's great. Those are both great choices. I love them. Tell me, what do you each believe makes Event Safety Alliance gutsy? Your organization is gutsy. What do you think makes it gutsy?
From my perspective, it's doing things of substance with few, little, or no resources. It literally is trying to make something out of nothing. And we do that. Sometimes I would estimate we do it quite well because of the character and the people that are involved. They're some of the finest people with the best hearts I've ever run into involved in this organization.
I spent 16 years with Linkin Park, the band. And Chester Bennington, who since passed death by suicide, used to say to me as he watched me try to push this mountain up a mountain for this mission and try to get this mission accomplished, why are you working so hard to prove a negative? How are you going to know that you've done something? And I think what makes us gutsy is there isn't going to be a reward at the other end. There isn't going to be a paycheck. There isn't going to be a trophy. There isn't going to be some phenomenal show. Fewer people will die or be harmed at live events, and we will have played a part in that. That's what makes us gutsy.
A huge part, actually, and it makes you very gutsy. And I just am in awe of what you just shared because you're doing it for the best reason in the world, which is really saving lives and doing it from your own hearts. And it's truly gutsy and beautiful. What is something that outsiders and maybe even a few insiders don't know about Event Safety Alliance?
Well, if there was such a thing, I probably wouldn't be talking about it here. But I will say this, that most don't realize that we're almost completely volunteer driven. It doesn't pay at all. I'm a volunteer. And I think that's kind of shocking, not just for my role, but there are people that give a lot of their time and effort and expertise just for the purpose of, it's the right thing. It's beneficial to all humanity. It is definitely just the right thing to do.
Jim, what about you? What is something that outsiders or maybe even a few insiders don't know?
We are functionally dysfunctional as an organization.
I love it.
Who knew that? Well, I guess anybody could have predicted that trying to elevate the least sexy subject in all of show business was going to be terrible or difficult or challenging or not have any money. I mean, there's a lot of stakeholders out there who really should care more about what it is that we do, and yet they don't turn up at the doorstep. And there's some behemoths out there who are suspicious by their absence, right? We're doing the hard work for the insurance companies. We're doing the hard work for the behemoths, and we're doing it in a way that's accessible and meaningful and has nothing but genuine concern and care at its core and what we're attempting to achieve. The unexposed secret is, we're functionally dysfunctional with a bunch of volunteers, all who hold down at least one full-time job, trying to make headway, and yet we're judged on the way we're able to make headway. Well, you try it,
If you could get one celebrity or influencer to endorse or talk about Event Safety Alliance, who might that be?
Elvis comes to mind, but I haven't seen him for weeks. One thing that we lack, um, Chester was an exception, but is an artist that's willing to, a high end artist who'd be willing to say that life safety is important and that there are some things that are going to be more difficult in your experience here because we want you to be safe and we insist. We require that you be safe, that we be safe, that the crew be safe. And we'll apologize a little bit up front, but really we support this.
Our next decade is our tagline for the next decade is safe events for all who gather. And that's audience, artist, spectator. It's the folks behind the scenes. And when we talk about this, we're born from the Indiana tragedy, but in reality, ever since Indiana, the lens has continued to widen. We've had Pulse nightclub shooting, we had Bataclan, we had Manchester, we had Vegas, we've had all these awful things. Christina Grimmie, happened since then. And in each instance, we've continued to expand our lens and the expertise with which we talk because we go and recruit those subject matter experts. So the benefactors of the work that we do, I can think of three, and I know you've only asked for one, but I can think of three who would immediately make a difference. And Bob Iger comes to mind, even though it's not music, but boy, there's a lot of people gathering there and they do safety well, but they're a leader in this space. So Bob Iger and Philip Anschutz of AEG and Michael Rapino, Live Nation. They would all turn the table for us immediately were they to recognize the good work that we're doing.
Yeah, those are great points because those are huge industry folks who really benefit from the work you're doing. So I wanted to say, any other comments before we close out? Any other comments you want to share?
Laura, we are immensely grateful for the opportunity to speak with you on your Small and Gutsy podcast. And, it's interesting when our journey travels outside of our comfort zone into a place like Small and Gutsy, and that there's even interest from someone such as yourself to participate. We are immensely grateful for that, especially during this time. I understand some other challenges. I think it's important to know that the mission came together because of people's hearts, and it sustains because of our heart and our desire to make sure that when my kids go to concerts, they're old enough to go to concerts, I can feel a little bit better about it. And I hold that same truth for anyone's family going to a concert or a live gathering where we might be able to influence a better outcome. So I'm just grateful that you gave us a microphone and a chance to talk.
Well, just for my part, we are a nonprofit, and we benefit from donations, both in kind and financial. And I'd like to just appeal and ask for anyone who's interested in the safety of your family or our family at an event, consider that as an option.
What's the best way to reach you?
Our website is eventsafetyalliance.org. You can find out everything you need to know, including how to donate, how to contribute. We would love to hear from you.
So first of all, I wanted to thank both of you because I so appreciate this conversation, because with each of my guests, I choose them because of their hearts. And so not only did that come through in this podcast so beautifully, and we'll spread the word as much as we can. And so will you, and we'll try to get those great titans to pay attention. Not sure. I'm in the LA area, so I may just have to go knocking on a few doors. I wonder if they'll let me in. So you've got to hear this podcast. These people are amazing. So we'll see what I can do. So my understanding, Jim, is that you have a conference coming in November. So tell us a little bit about that before we close out on the podcast.
Sure. The Event Safety Summit has been taking place since 2014. And this will be the first time we've remotely located the Event Safety Summit to the city of Houston, who has welcomed us to participate there and to deliver the conference there. We typically have about 500 people in attendance. This year it's November 7, 8, and 9. I'll hold off the name of the venue just because I'm not sure all the ink's dry on that yet, but We will be in the city of Houston, November 7, 8, and 9 for the Event Safety Summit, where we will do 3 days of thought leadership and learning and education around safety. As fun as that sounds, and we'll make it fun for you as well. And I've heard the city of Houston wants us to have a good time while we're there too. So
It sounds terrific, and I'm sure all the information will be posted on your website shortly.
it will, and there'll be a save the date announcement coming out soon, if not when we release this.
Great, that's fabulous. And my guess is the event will be very safe for everybody in attendance.
Gosh, we hope so.
No doubt, no doubt. All of the Small and Gutsy episodes can be found on the Intrinsic Group website, which has a Small and Gutsy page. The opinions and viewpoints expressed by our guests are independent and do not reflect the position of Small and Gutsy. Of course, we can't take responsibility outside of our own vetting of the organizations we interview, so before you sign on to support or work for them, we encourage you to do your own due diligence and research them as well. We just want you to learn about the Small and Gutsy nonprofit and social impact organizational sector so they can spread their story and their impactful work. I want to thank my partners in this endeavor, the Intrinsic Group, my brilliant sound engineer and composer, Pavel Franson, my very talented graphic designer, Nate Addy. Please check out their bios on the Intrinsic website. My incredible board of directors, Tracy Brown, John Gatto, Lucy Mello, Serena Rajabian, who believed in me and this project enough so to sign on to support this effort, and all of the folks, friends, and family who have guided and inspired me. A very special thank you to my biggest champion, #1 fan, and best friend, without whom none of this would be possible. Thanks, Mark Witkoff. Thanks for being there. And thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends, give us some stars, and write a review on wherever you listen to podcasts. From small and gutsy to big with impact, I'm Laura Witkoff. Thanks for listening.